Yeah. Good morning, Chris.
Morning.
If you could you just kind of start with some of your impressions of how 2025 went and where the club stands heading into 2026?
Successful, not a successful season. That's really for my bosses, the fan base, to kind of judge. I think we achieved a lot. We turned over a lot of players. We signed 14 new players, two DPs, obviously big, impactful players, one that was new to the league. And so putting together the season we did, I think there's a lot to be proud of in this building, but I think the reality is we all feel like we fell a bit short too. To fall a point short of the Supporter Shield with some of the performances at home, with some stretches where we weren't productive scoring goals, and to lay an egg a bit against Miami at home in front of our fans, that hurts. And so that's not good enough, and that's where there's been a lot of high-level conversations about refreshing things in year 5 and being really strategic and analytical as we go into 26 and have clear targets, markers, goals that drive and inform a lot of what we do as far as personnel and formation and style of play, because we have, the most points over the last 3 years. That's a lot to be proud of for a lot of people in this building, but I think that's also the best time to maybe look at making some changes.
Chris, I guess I'll start with the most recent news, and that the club announced that Brenner would be returning to Udinese, and I'm sure that was a tough decision given the way he performed down the stretch. Could you kind of go into shed some light on some of the things that went into that and where the club stands with that?
Yeah, I mean, we explored a number of options to be able to keep Brenner. Unfortunately, it's a salary cap league. We feel like we've been creative as anyone, using the mechanics of the league to build rosters and to have success. Unfortunately, this decision was made for us. The Udinese would not extend the loan, and therefore we didn't have the ability to bring him back. Sort of fell in our laps on deadline day and was a great additive piece to help us win some games. Again, ultimately, I think we all fell short, but really thankful for his second stint here and wish him all the best going forward.
To build on that, well, let me start here. Do you view the 4-0 loss to Miami, like everyone makes a lot out of how Miami has put together their roster. Do you view that loss as an indication of a gap in talent or more of a one-off? And how would you close that gap to make sure you guys could maybe get to that next level given that you do have your DP spots already allocated for next year?
There's multiple ways to win in this league. I think there were stretches early on that if we get the first goal, I think we can be competitive against a team like Miami. I think we've showed that. You have to score goals when you play Miami, and you probably have to score 3. And I think we have the ability and had the ability and a team on the field to do that, and we didn't. And so there's always gaps in talent and spending. Our league has shown that if you're creative in how you operate, how you build a team, how you coach, structures you put in place, I think teams can be competitive. Philly's a good example. And so, no, I think we'll continue to be hopefully in the upper echelon of our league, being able to compete for trophies.
This team scored the second fewest goals among Eastern Conference playoff teams. I guess, a lot of teams use all their DP spots on attack. You guys have invested one of those in a center back this year. Just, I guess, given making that decision, knowing that you wouldn't be able to add a player like Brenner on a DP spot, I guess, how do you replace that production that you guys got out of Brenner in such a short amount of time?
I would say, this version, which is why we're sort of pointing to maybe driving towards expected goals next year and having that be a goal. I think that there's pieces we can put in place around Kevin and Evander that maybe get the most out of them and actually get more production out of them, and that's a lot of what we're attacking this offseason. It's clear that Brenner was an additive piece and scored goals, but ultimately he didn't necessarily, we weren't holding a trophy at the end too, right? So in the end, we still fell a bit short. Look, I think there's multiple ways to sort of construct your roster and be successful in MLS. I mean, I can just point to the only trophy we've won here in MLS. We had 2 attacking DPs and a center midfielder DP, right? So I think we have the pieces in place with Kevin and Evander as sort of the centerpieces to then go supplement them and be really analytical and identify staff that's ready to sort of dig into that side of it to be able to make up for maybe the goals that Brenner provided over a very short period of time.
Kevin and Evander, just as leaders, are they the top 2 duo that you've had here in terms of leadership?
I think so. Certainly Evander, he's a bit older. He's been in our league. I think Kevin's still finding himself as a leader. We're lucky to have, I think, a good amount of leadership on our team. I mean, Miles stepping into the captaincy towards the end of the year, really owning that, really owning the fact that he's most likely going to play in a World Cup and understanding when you walk in the room, people look at you that way. So we're lucky to have a wealth of leadership. Obi, Nick, Alec Khan, who unfortunately walked out the door. But it's sort of, there's a group of leaders that we lean on. When your most talented players are also leaders, that's when it's, I think that's when you find the most success. And we'll keep pushing Kevin and Evander to continue to do so.
When's the last time you walked out of a season satisfied?
I guess when I won the double when I was playing in 2005, come
on,
because we kind of won everything there was to win. I mean, unless you win everything there is to win, you're not satisfied. I mean, that's the nature of being a competitor. So hopefully we can be collectively satisfied here over the next couple seasons.
So even after the Shield, there was still, even after that year.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that was the Columbus game at home. I mean, I don't really want to talk about it, but who can forget it? I'm sure the fans can't. So that's why we're here, is to try to win everything. And so unless you do so, you're always going to be a little bit dissatisfied.
Chris, the club announced, I think it was last week, that Dom Kinnear had departed from the club. Could you shed some light on kind of what he brought to the club and what you may look to replace that in the staff next year?
What Dom did for this club and for Pat and for me personally is immeasurable. To help instill a culture here, Dom is an MLS legend, so these weren't easy conversations. But I think, and we'll always be grateful for that, honestly. I think collectively we came to the decision as part of this year 5 refresh that it was good to move on for everyone. And Dom's going to have opportunities, of course, because he's an incredible coach, leader. But in the end, I think we'll look to add someone that, in line with sort of all the high-level conversations we've had in terms of driving expected goals, being more analytical, taking what we have in the back of house and what already exists here and kind of how we recruit and flowing that into the coach's room a little bit more and allowing that to hopefully show up on Saturday more often.
I think you said off the top you called it a successful, unsuccessful season. And I guess I was just curious as to where did you see this team improve or grow most over this year? And then kind of going into some of the stuff you're mentioning, where does it need to grow into 2026 to get to the level that you're aiming for?
I don't. We had so many. We had a lot of change this year. We had a big winter window that I think, credit to my guys that we nailed. And we had a summer window that credit to my guys that I think we nailed. With that comes a lot of change for coaches and a lot of integration. And I thought those guys did a great job. Growth. I don't know that we grew a ton over the course of the season. It felt like we kind of hung on more, and we kept adding in personnel and trying to augment this the system and these great players and support them, but ultimately probably didn't see the level of growth that we all hope for, and that's why we're having the conversations that we're having now. I'm sorry, what was the second part?
Where does it need to grow into for 26?
Leveraging what our best assets are, which is our stadium and our fan base. Those are our two best assets. And so there were times when I was sitting at TQL and it felt a little stale, and that's not what we should be. We should have the ability to smother teams when they come in here and to be convincing. And that means leveraging our best assets, which is the stadium, the fan base, but our best players, to make them more efficient, to make them understand each other's game better, to then score more goals, to give that feeling to the fans, to ultimately they give it back to us. So that's really what we're talking about as we move forward.
And talking about this refresh, other than maybe some new ideas with a new assistant coming in, and then you talked about the expected goals, kind of looking at that. Could you shed a little bit more light so the fans have an idea, like what they can expect to see different on the field? Like you mentioned, like could a formation change be part of that?
Sure, a formation change, a style change, the way we scout wingbacks, all of it should drive back to these markers that we're setting for ourselves. And so if a formation change can drive more expected goals and drive more success from Kevin and Evander in their relationship and get us more wins at TQL, then it's on the table. But that to us is not the driver. The formation change isn't the driver to get there. We want to be clear in what our goals are, and if formation change or personnel changes are part of that, it's all on the table.
I guess I'm kind of wondering about a formation change also because you have a guy like Sammy that comes in, and you already have Obi in that spot.
Yep.
And I know that was some tough decisions for Pat during the playoffs when Obi was healthy, and
Sure.
he chose Sammy over that. And then you've got Pavel, who I think last summer you said in the summer you mentioned he was kind of your best player. So how do you utilize all those guys? And I mean, is there room for Sammy and Obi?
Yeah, I mean, that's the good thing about MLS now. Gone are the days of you need 11 starters and then you want to look down the bench and have 8 bench guys. The way our league's grown is, go watch Man United Bournemouth yesterday and look at the guys sitting on United's bench. Our job is to get the most good players. And so we're going to start a stretch next year with the condensed schedule because of the World Cup break where we're Wednesday, Saturday for 2 months. There's going to be plenty of minutes to go around. There's always injuries. And so, you have to have the depth to be able to sustain that. I think, to my guys' credit, I think this was maybe the deepest group we had by the end. Was it together long enough to really have that growth that you mentioned earlier? It's difficult. That's part of the reason we're also flipping the schedule. So you're not adding 8 new players with, 8 games to go. Ultimately, we're gonna do everything we can to evaluate everything to have the most success going forward.
And then going back to Evander and Kevin Denke, obviously both individually very talented, did a lot for this team, but there was kind of a perception that maybe they weren't always on the same page, like chemistry-wise. How do you? I don't know if you view it that way, but how do you get them kind of working together better?
That's another one of our strategic priorities going into 26. You're right, and the fans are right, and we have the same conversations. Sometimes you're dealing with that because you got 2 players that don't like each other. We've maybe had that in the past. The good thing is we don't have that. These guys like each other. They enjoy each other's company. I mean, credit to Evander. He gets along with everyone. It's tough for a new player to show up and even have the level of success that Kevin did. And so we'll maybe give him a pass that he had a bunch of success but didn't connect with the number 10 in year 1. But it's something that we're very keen on improving because we think if their production, their relationship can grow, it's sort of their production can compound. And like I said, cover up some of the goals that maybe walked out the door with the inability to keep Brenner.
Anticipate Luka being back next year?
I don't know. I mean, Luka's a player that's got a ton of value, both in league, out of league. He's a player that I've received calls about for the last 2 years. We think he will get back to the level of production that he had in 24. It's a bit of a down year for Luka. But we've sold players, we've not sold players. So if the deal presents itself and it's right for Luka and it's right for FC Cincinnati, of course we'll evaluate it.
Chris, you talk about some of the high-level changes in the conversations you're having. How much does that start right now with the recruitment, with the offseason, with free agency, versus starting in preseason when you're on the pitch? Or do those things walk? One doesn't come without the other. I guess what's the chicken and what's the egg?
Yeah, I mean, look, in reality, the coaches are trying to win games and are in the playoffs, and and you need them focused on trying to go beat Columbus and then trying to go beat Miami. For me, they started in July.
Sure.
In thinking about what the next version of ourselves we could be. And then as soon as the season ended, his staff was brought in, and hours spent around my dining room table. It's like a Jeff Burton kitchen table reference there. Where we dug into a lot of this stuff. And so often when you're in the middle of the season, Pat and I have these conversations all year long. It's tough to maybe implement the type of change that we're talking about mid-year. And so I think everyone in the building sees an opportunity to be able to do that now.
You mentioned the changes that happened and how that added some complexity to it. How valuable do you see it as having, there will be changes to the roster, but having some stability in terms of your key players in and ready for preseason to be together for that whole time?
Yeah, I think, again, there's always something unforeseen. I'll get a call right after this. But, we have a nice core of very talented players that understand what it is to be an FC Cincinnati player coming back. I think maybe similar from 23 to 24, or maybe more similar from 22 to 23, that gave us the ability to have that continuity to go on and win a supporter shield. So we're going to continue to add players. We're in conversations right now. There will be movement, but hopefully not as much as in the past 2 windows.
I have a lot of questions. Sorry.
All right.
I know I keep asking. I know I keep asking about the DPs, but I don't know if we ever asked you about Miles. Like what makes him worth that DP spot? I think that's something the fans have really wondered about. Just looking at.
I think we always knew to keep Miles Robinson long term, for him to be an FC Cincinnati player, that it was going to take this level of compensation to keep him. And we've been in the business at FC Cincinnati to get the most good players we can. And as we see it, Miles is the best center back in MLS. His defensive qualities, I could sit here and talk about for 25 minutes, and so could the national team staff. And so for us, it's a no-brainer to bring Miles back, even at this level of compensation. Are there changes coming in the league that might allow more flexibility to do things? I think there are. We didn't have the ability to time all that up, but we're certainly not going to let Miles Robinson walk out the door because of that. And like I said earlier, there's multiple ways to win trophies, just like we showed in 23. And if a center back's a DP, then we'll do a better job in other places to make sure that we have enough pieces on the field to score goals and win games.
You guys also brought Matt Miazga back on his option. Not that you were choosing between one or the other, but Matt, another high-level player. We know what he went through, this last year. But what are those conversations like? Is that something you have to deal with as a locker room thing when, you see another center back, another guy at that position getting that long-term deal that maybe Matt was also hoping for? Is that something?
I deal with that stuff all the time. Yeah.
How do you manage that with a player though?
Look, Matt's been a big part of our success. Unfortunately, but tough injury, horrific injury last summer. summer of '24 that kind of, I think, affected him coming back in his rehab. Wasn't ready for preseason, dealt with some soft tissue stuff he hasn't in the past. I had a big injury in my career, and the immediate year following was similar. So I suspect Mac to be back to himself, to his old ways, with a full preseason going into 26. As far as managing contracts and budgets and personalities, that's just part of the business. So we do that every day.
I wonder, because there have been some center back trades already happening in the league. Is he a player that you would listen to offers for if that?
I would listen to offers for all 30 players if they make sense. I mean, honestly, I mean that's the nature of the business. If someone said, and if someone came for Kevin tomorrow for $150 million, I'd probably listen. But we're not planning on moving him anywhere.
Chris, I know one place that the club has looked to, elevate with it, FCC2, the academy, is young players being a pipeline into your first team. And we've seen some of that with the way you've promoted players into the first team contracts, but with the way you guys have been so competitive over the last couple of years, it's been hard. Seeing those younger players finding roles has been a little difficult. How do you view, you talked about it as being the 10,000-foot view, coaches are trying to win in the moment. How do you view the balance of making sure those young players are getting the development they need while also continuing to find the success you have with the veterans?
Yeah, it's a tough balance. I mean, I think a lot of teams are dealing with it. We need to be better in the youth space, and we've made a lot of strides. But with FCC2 and the academy, to make the decisions harder for Pat. I think he's a coach coming from Philly, where we did play a lot of young players because there were a lot of young players that were up to the level that are now maybe playing in Europe. And so it's our job and the job of our FCC2 staff and Jeff Lorenowitz and Larry Sunderland and all these guys to find better players, develop better players. We'll be hiring a new FCC2 coach. I mean, his job is to produce pros that we can put on the field in TQL and one day sell. So the directive's clear. It's our job to make the decision harder for Pat and his staff.
You kind of got to my follow-up there, but an FCC2 coach and FCC2 staff, what do you envision being a key attribute of whatever that new person brings that would best elevate the organization?
That they have their arms around what it takes to develop young men and have them mature to be adults. Most importantly, that there's a big part of that age group that's you need to be a bit of a father figure and know when to kick a kid in the butt and know when to give him a hug. But ultimately, it's about being a developer and waking up every day wanting to make our top prospects better. That's really the main. That's the biggest part of the criteria when identifying an FCC2 coach.
Going back to some of the young players, Dotto is a player that's kind of come up as maybe some other teams might be interested in him. He was very productive early in the season. I think he had 5 goals pretty early, and then we didn't see him as much. I know he kind of falls in that tough spot of being behind Evander in his natural position. Exactly. But can you shed some light on kind of your expectations for him moving forward?
Yeah, you said it, Laurel. Because we have Evander, who's an MVP finalist. Dotto's a 10, and that's a credit to Dotto. There's not a lot of young American 10s that can produce goals and assists like he can produce. Earlier in the year, we played a lot with 2 10s, and that probably got him on the field a bit more. But when we talk about evolving and smothering teams at home and having the level of production that our ownership expects, the 2-10 system wasn't giving us that and wasn't complementing maybe Evander and Kevin. And so we'll continue to find ways for him to get on the field. Credit to Dotto in our end of the year meeting. He said, will you consider me late in the games to play wingback so I can get on the field? And so that's the sign of a kid that's hungry and is going to continue to develop. He does have a lot of interest. He should. There's not a lot of 20-year-olds running around from the U.S. that can produce like he can. So if the opportunity comes to put him in a position where it's right for him to continue his development, the deal's right for FC Cincinnati, of course, we'd consider it.
And then I guess this is kind of a tough question because I don't know Pat Noonan's contract says. We know he was extended in 2023, but just kind of looking at 2025, you kind of mentioned like it felt like it didn't, you guys were kind of not growing in the way
Yep.
you felt. So what are your expectations for him in 2026? And is this, how important is this year for him?
It's important for all of us. No one has higher expectations of themselves than Pat. I haven't been in any secret meetings that Pat hasn't been a part of. So we've built this thing together. We'll continue to build this thing together. He's an excellent coach that a lot of teams would love to have. But he's also very bright, very intellectual, very open to a lot of the things we're talking about. And so he's been a part of the collective soccer mind in how we push this thing forward, and he'll continue to be that.
Chris, I don't think we're waiting on any more decisions to be announced. I think Brenner was the last. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But when looking at all the departures from the team, how do you view personality type as a thing that you're looking to add, in addition to skills on the field? But guys who are leaders, guys who are influential in the group. How do you view personality type as a thing you're looking to add into next season? And what would that maybe be? How would you identify that as a trait?
Yeah, it's something that's near and dear to how I think about the world. So
Sure.
It's something that we're intent on. We have data and analytics that sort of works with event data to evaluate to identify an FC Cincinnati player.
Sure.
We have physical data and an algorithm that interacts with that identifies an FC Cincinnati player, and we're working on a sort of mentality, kind of personality test. They're not as easy to build.
Sure.
But certainly something that we're intent on trying to develop to make sure that we are bringing in the right characters, personality, people. It's a different generation of player than when I played. We weren't staring at our phones 30 seconds after the game ended. So it's, you're trying to relate to a generation and identify and recruit something that's foreign to what you were as a player. Not that that's right or wrong. So it's becoming, there's increasingly less leaders running around,
Sure.
I would say, just naturally. But yes, something we talk about, think about, and are continue to try to improve upon as we, identify the right people for FC Cincinnati.
Not to hold you to a specific trait, but is there an FC Cincinnati personality? Like what would be the thing that you would describe as the FC Cincinnati personality of a player? You're the perfect version of it, I guess. No one's perfect, but is there a version of that
Is
exists?
there a version of Nick Haglin's darn close?
Okay.
I would say.
Sure.
I would say self-aware is the most important quality in humanity. Sure. Know what you are, know what you aren't. So that's where we start.
Going back to the first question, I think Carter asked, and you answered that whether it's a success is kind of up to the fans and ownership. Well, we don't hear from ownership very much. Can you shed some light on like how they did view this year?
I don't really want to speak for Carl or for Jeff or for that group right now. I don't think it's appropriate. What I would tell you is I have a great working relationship with them, and they are in the weeds with me on all of this. And that's part of the reason that we have success is because I have that line of communication directly. And so that's something that's special that doesn't exist in a lot of places in MLS. We're grateful for that, and they're going to continue to help me steer this thing. But I don't really want to comment on that. You can probably track them down.
And then just looking at, because of the schedule change coming up in 2027, how do you manage like new player contract? Like how much of a wrinkle does that throw in as you guys are negotiating with players? And how do you handle guys that are already here and maybe have those contracts
Yeah.
in flux then?
All of that guidance has not been, again, remember, all these players' contracts are with Major League Soccer. They're not with FC Cincinnati, right? We have not done a contract yet. What I will tell you is that all the deals I've heard of are all 3.5, 2.5, 4.5 in order to get into that summer. We have not done one yet, but that's obviously how I suspect going forward. As far as existing players, we haven't gotten that guidance just yet.
Does that bring about, like, I guess, are there other ways that you guys have to start kind of preparing for that shift?
There's a lot of things to prepare for when you're talking about a schedule change. I think the opportunities, though, are far greater than the risks with the schedule change. I think it's going to open up a pool of players at the right time that we haven't had access to before. And, credit to our ownership group and MLS as a whole, we've become real global players in the transfer market. We're talking about 16, 20 million, $25 million transfer fees. We've arrived that way. So I think the schedule flip is kind of right on time for where we need to be as a league.
I guess technically it's not a new player announced, but you guys converted the loan of Ayub Jabari to a permanent one. He had a short time amongst the guys you mentioned, but he played a big role, especially in that third Columbus game. What did you see from him in that time, and why was it important that you guys bring him back? And I guess, what does he add to your group that made it important to bring him back specifically?
We think he's a great complement to Kevin and Evander. He's obviously, he looks like he plays for the Bengals, right? So I don't need to get into just athletically, but his ability to run in behind, hold up play, just selflessness. There's a lot of things to like about him that I think will open space for our two highest paid players. And so when we identified him in the summer, it was a very clear profile type that we were looking to kind of help unlock those two a bit. And so I'm excited for his next season, having a preseason, all these guys.
Yeah.
Sam Geedy and Ender and Jabari, for those guys to factor in and be starters in a playoff game, against Lionel Messi and beat. That's remarkable for young kids to do that. Jabari's not that much older. I really look forward to those guys having a preseason and being able to help the group at even a greater level.